Hi everybody again, this is Daniel Evans, and we're going to start looking today at issues of corporate strategy. Over the next three-part video, we'll look at corporate strategy, what it is, how do we grow a company, how do we decide what business units we want to have in an organization. We'll look at issues of diversification, in, for example, vertical integration, and then we'll look at issues of alliances at the corporate level. But to start, what I'd like you to do is just watch this short video that talks a little bit about the recent failure of Thomas Cook. I think you'll enjoy it.
This is departures for Thomas Cook in Manchester Airport. There are no staff, no passengers, and no flights. Because the oldest travel company in the country is no longer in business.
Well, Thomas Cook's collapse is being blamed on a myriad of issues, including the internet revolution and even Brexit. But the British public is still going on holiday. So why did we stop Thomas cooking it? 178 years ago, Thomas Cook invented the mass market holiday. A pioneer. But today the company collapsed after failing to move with the times. Its aircraft grounded. Now they'll be sold off to pay its debts. The British government has in the past stepped in to help stricken firms, most recently British Steel. But the Transport Secretary refused Thomas Cook's plea for a £250 million cash lifeline, saying it wasn't worth it.
I don't think that there was a route through to pumping in taxpayers' money and then actually avoiding today. I think today would have happened even if we'd done that and spent more taxpayers' money on.
The company was a giant, recording annual sales of £9 billion in the last financial year, carrying 19 million customers a year, with 22,000 staff in 16 countries, including 9,000 in the UK.
We promise to find you a holiday resort that fits all your requirements.
But those gargantuan figures were overshadowed by some eye-watering numbers on the balance sheet. In March, the company recorded a record loss of £1.5 billion. That included writing off more than £1 billion from its ill-fated takeover of package holiday company MyTravel. In August, it announced it had raised £900 million just to keep trading. But this weekend, banks refused its request for an additional £200 million to tide it over the winter. Crippled by debt, it went under. So what went wrong? The company has blamed Brexit uncertainty and the linked fall in sterling for hitting bookings. It also said the 2018 heatwave caused people to stay at home. But its demise was partly self-inflicted. Maintaining 500 shops in an age of online booking wasn't smart.
In an increasingly online world, I think it was starting to fall behind. And if you think of how future generations of holidaymakers are going to book their holidays, swipe, swipe, move on after 8 seconds, I think Thomas Cook had a huge amount of work to adapt for that. And again, the debt was preventing it from making that change that it had to make.
The Pension Protection Fund has said staff pensions will be safe, including the tidy sum put by Chief Executive Peter Fankhauser. He's earned more than £8 million since 2014, including bonuses, and presided over the company's demise. Amid calls for the directors to repay their bonuses, the business secretary has asked the Insolvency Service to investigate their conduct and whether their actions have damaged the pension schemes.
So, what have we seen? Thomas Cook, large organization, extremely vertically integrated. They were doing things up and down the value chain in their industry. They were managing their own travel agency, tour operator. They were operating airlines. They were doing many, many, many things. This is a highly diversified organization. Well, it failed. It failed for a lot of reasons. It failed because it was maybe too big. It was doing too many different things. It failed because they had a lot of physical agencies that probably they didn't need, and this created a huge fixed cost that they had to pay through with having large numbers of units or amount of sales. If you don't have big volume, you can't cover a high fixed cost. They were competing against online travel agencies, and they weren't ready for that. They acquired a failing online MyTravel. which didn't help. And they were paying their C-suite people, so chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief innovation officer, etc., the C-suite, with huge amounts of pay and bonuses. And this is why, I mean, all this stuff came together, and this is why the government said, we're not going to bail you out. We're not going to help you. It was a failing company. It went under. It probably, you know, it's sad to say, probably deserved to go under. It was poorly managed. The parent organization was not effectively managing all the children in this large, complex beast of an organization. Was it too diversified? Was it too big? Probably. And these are the questions that corporations have to ask themselves as they grow and become bigger and bigger. So in this section, we're going to be focusing on the strategic choices linked to corporate strategy and alliances and acquisitions. Now, this is a lot of material, so we're going to break this down into 3 separate videos. The first video is going to look at growth strategies, diversification, and vertical integration. The second video will take a look at corporate parenting. So what's the role of a good parent? You know, how do we manage all these children we've got? And management of a business portfolio. So we have a bunch of strategic business units. How do we manage the portfolio? And lastly, we'll look into issues of strategic alliances. So let's start. Let's take a look at our first issue, and that is obviously of growth. So corporate strategy, you have Dannon Corporation. You want to grow your company. Dannon has a lot of business units. It's grown. It's built up, as we've seen in the past, a series of different divisions. You know, do we want to grow it even more? Do we want to have more divisions? Do we want to do more stuff? And these are some of the questions companies ask. You know, they're very interested in knowing to what extent we can use our existing capabilities and maybe grow and emerge and make a company respond to an emerging need in a market. How broad do we want our company to be? Are we ready to go into a new domain that maybe we don't master right now? Or should we go into maybe a new market with existing products? What are the potential benefits? What are the costs? Some of the questions that we ask ourselves at the corporate level when we're doing this. First one, you know, what directions can I take? You know, what businesses do I want to be in? Do I want to go into a new market? Do I want to sell a new product in my existing market? You know, what directions can I take? And after I know what directions I can take, I'm going to ask another question, which is, well, why should I do it? Why should I diversify my activity from what I'm doing right now? I understand I can go in certain directions, but why do it? Why do it? The third question we often ask is, should we integrate activities that are above stream or below us? So let's get started right away, and let's just first get a feeling for what are we talking about when we talk about corporate business strategy. So corporate strategy, you know, is all about managing all these business units. We saw last time that Dannon has a series of business units that it operates. Well, why? Why dairy? Why water? Why baby food? Why not something else? And should I grow even more? Should I stop growing? These are some of the basic questions that large corporations ask themselves. They're wondering, you know, what are the benefits? What are the costs of growing, of doing more things? And do I have what it takes to make this all happen? So some of the key questions they're going to be asking, you know, at the corporate level for corporate strategy. What directions can I take? I'm ready to grow. I'm interested in growing. How can I grow? What different directions? What businesses do I want to be in eventually? Do I want to have a new market? Do I have a new product? These are direction questions. Second would be, you know, why should I diversify? What are the potential benefits? What drives me to diversify? A third question, well, can we integrate activities that are above or upstream or below us or downstream from where we are? This is called vertical integration. This is a way to diversify. I can start integrating vertically and expand my operations. Another critical question are what are the potential benefits I can bring to a series of SBUs, strategic business units, as a parent? What am I bringing as a parent to all these different organizations? Why put them under one roof? And a final question that we'll look at in the video is, and this will be the second video, is how do we manage our portfolio of different strategic business units? So let's start with strategy directions. In which directions can I diversify? So this was addressed by Igor Ansoff when he developed the product market growth matrix, and he basically tried to answer the question about what directions can a company grow, and this is pretty basic to understand. So we start by understanding that we can look at the product service axis. We can say, well, I have an existing product, what I'm selling right now, and I have new products. I can start selling different products than I currently produce. So that's the first area of potential growth. The second is going to be looking at markets. I can be in my existing market where I am, or I can expand into new markets that where I currently am not selling my products. This is the second vector of potential growth. So overall, we've got this huge area we can play in, and we're going to define appropriately 4 different strategies. The first strategy is a consolidation strategy, where we're going to stay with existing markets. We're going to sell to the people we're selling to right now, and we're going to continue selling our products, and we're going to penetrate even deeper this market. The second, third, and fourth are diversification strategies. This is where we really start integrating this question of diversification, going into new product range or new markets. Many options available to us here. Okay, so what can we do? We can go into new products in the same market. So we can stay where we are. We can say we're going to operate in our existing market, but we're going to offer them a new product. This is our first type of diversification. A second type of diversification is going to be down here, where we're going to move into using our existing product and maybe selling it to new people, so new markets. And a lot of companies have chosen to do this. And our last option is over here, and it's not a related diversification strategy. These are related. We're doing something old. We're using our existing market here. We're using our existing product here. But here, well, things are a little different. And this is a conglomerate strategy. This is totally unrelated to what we're doing. We're looking at new products. We're looking at new markets. We're doing something totally unrelated. So these are the 4 basic choices we've got. Penetrate our existing market to grow it. Grow through basically taking our existing market and selling them new products. Grow with our existing product and selling it to new markets. Or grow through offering new products to new markets, totally unrelated to what I'm doing, a non-related diversification strategy. So let's take a look one by one. So market penetration, we've got it up here. We've got this area up here. We're looking at penetrating our existing market with our existing products. So this is basically growing market share, right? This is basically saying we're going to take our current product range, we're going to continue selling our current markets, and we're just going to, increase our share. First thing you've got to be aware of is that, in this I'm going to bring up my diagram here, is remember back when we looked at market growth, and over time, what do we see? We see that markets tend to grow fast and then they decline. So over time, as time is advancing here, we're going to see, a period of high growth, which is here. Okay, so we have our high growth period. It's going to peak and then we're going to decline. The markets will go down. This is a typical life cycle of an industry, actually, of a market and industry. So if we want to grow our part of the pie, if we want to take more and more customers, if we're in this growth market, which is here, this is pretty reasonable. I mean, we can actually grow more and more customers because the pie, if you will, is getting bigger. You know, we have a pie and we were taking a piece of pie like that. Now the pie is going to be really, really big. We can take, you know, the same percentage and have even more customers. And our competitors are probably trying to do the same thing. Difficulty is here, right? The difficulty is going to be up in here when there's not a lot of growth, when the market's flattening out, and we're going to say, oh, I want to get more customers, and what's going to happen? Our rivals will come after us, and this can be very, very tough to do. Now, one potential way to do it is to acquire our rivals. Acquire rivals in low growth markets, and it's mentioned here. Why not? This is a potential strategy. However, bear in mind that we have so-called horizontal merger guidelines or rules that exist that tell us what percent of the total market share we can have as we, you know, buy our competitors. And there's a fear by regulators of a company acquiring what's called a dominant position. So yeah, I can go out and buy my competitors, and if I've got, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 competitors, well, if I buy all of these and put them into one company, suddenly maybe this company's got maybe 80% of the market share, and that may be just a little bit too much for the competition authorities, the regulators of competition in an industry. So we have to follow certain guidelines when we do this. Second strategy we're looking at is the new products for existing markets. So I've got a market. I understand the market that I'm selling my product to. Can I sell them a new product? You know, hey, I'm selling people lemonade. Can I sell them Coke or iced tea at the same time? Why not? And this is one of the strategies that's out there. So pretty good example of this over here. We've got, you know, the iPod. In 2001, Apple was producing this player that you could listen to music on, or a digital player. And they said, hey, let's add some new features and sell our second product, which was the iPhone. And they expanded even further 3 years later and sold the iPad. So they're taking the existing market and selling very related products in terms of production, components, skills, etc. So they're taking their internal skills and knowledge and expanding their product line to their existing market, and that worked pretty well for Apple. Bear in mind that if you do this strategy, new processes and skills may be needed to be mastered to really take advantage of these new markets. Good example is digital transformation. More and more companies adding digital strategies and digital distribution processes and digital services and digital ways of ordering products and whatnot. Well, all of this requires some new skills. So we may have some significant investments to go. As Apple moved from the iPod to the iPhone and onto the iPad, they probably made some significant investments. The fact that they were doing things that were related lowered the risk of those investments. Another potential risk as we develop new products, here we've got a pretty good example of the Boeing Dreamliner. The Dreamliner, or the 787, yeah, it's another airplane, but it was much more complex, using carbon fiber, totally different than past airplanes, much more oriented towards energy efficiency. As a result, this product took 2 years delay in its production. So be careful. Developing new products, you are tackling a new product. It can be similar, but there will be some possible hidden costs to doing that. Our third way of expanding and growing, taking our existing product that we sell and slightly modifying it maybe to adapt to a new market. And so what do we mean here? Well, we're basically doing something with new users. So we're taking a phone, for example. Maybe I sell cell phones. And I'm saying, hey, look, cell phones aren't being sold, or not being purchased, pardon me, by senior citizens, let's adapt the cell phone. And so, we get a cell phone here that's really simple. Basic touch screen, there's no touch screen, basically the keypad, and off we go. And I market this to a new market, the elderly senior citizen market, or the silver economy. So I have new users. Or I can say, hey, I make a great hamburger, I sell it in the United States. Let's take Steak and Shake, which was a U.S. chain, or which is a U.S. chain, and let's start exporting. Let's start setting up operations in foreign countries. And here we see Steak and Shake is going expanding beyond its local market into other markets. Now, this is a good strategy. It can work. Be careful, because some adaptations may be required. You sometimes just can't take a product and plug it into a new market. We saw this. The phone maybe was slightly adapted. The advertising, the marketing processes of selling hamburgers in France is maybe different. The laws are different. The human resources laws of setting up operations abroad are totally different. So don't expect it to be the same. Just because you're taking an existing product to a new market doesn't mean you can be exactly the same. Things will change as you go forward. And make sure that you meet and understand the critical success factors of this new market. Do you have the internal capabilities to succeed? Are you able to market a hamburger maybe in a country that is not ready for a hamburger? A real good example would be Subway. Subway sandwiches was working really, really well in the United States. They came to France, and it was a slow start. The market wasn't quite ready, and so they had to develop new capacities and capabilities to market to that new to market their product to this different market. Lastly, we have conglomerate diversification, where we're looking at a radical change in scope of what we do. We were doing one product. We were up here, existing product, existing market, and now literally we're over here selling stuff that's completely different, new products and new markets. Now, the benefits of this are that, well, I can probably benefit from some synergies. So maybe I've got something that I'm doing that I do well. It provides me with some core competency, and I can use that skill of my organization in a totally new market and new product. These are called economies of scope, and it's basically related to synergies and producing complementary products. So I've got two products that are complementary. They have some similarities. They're consumed maybe together, and maybe in production they have some similarities as well. And so I can benefit from these complementarities that exist. By moving into conglomerate diversification, I'm growing my company massively, probably, and large size can have its benefits. I can access financing that I probably couldn't access before if I was smaller. I can probably apply my brand value to a new offer. I can move from my existing market, which is up here, down to a new market, a new product over here, and apply my brand to this new market and new product, so I can benefit from so-called halo effects. But be careful. All these synergies, scope economies, benefits that I got from my past market and product in a new market and product may not be there, and customers and investors can be skeptical of these synergies. They're tough to manage, and sometimes the bureaucratic costs of managing can far outweigh the potential benefits, and so conglomerates can suffer from a decreased price of their shares in the stock market, because investors know that this is much more difficult than it sounds. So why diversify? Why could it be good for me to do this? What are some potential drivers for me to push me to diversify? Well, the first potential driver are what I just mentioned, economies of scope. So economies of scope refer to gains made through applying existing resources and competencies to new markets or services. I'm expanding somehow. I'm doing stuff, different stuff in new markets or services, and I can benefit from what I already have. A really good example of this here is the London School of Economics. The LSE basically owns all of these properties, right? They own all these student residency properties, and students rent them during the summer year, the school year. But what happens to these properties between the month of May, June, July, August? Well, they're empty. Okay, they've got this huge investment. It's basically empty. What do? They started LSE Vacations. And LSE Vacations uses a skill they've already got. They're applying that skill to basically summer rentals, inexpensive rentals too, for the City of London, which is really a great deal. And this is an economy of scope. They're doing two different things, but by doing these two different things, they're actually decreasing their average cost of production for each of these types of offers. Another is Tesla. I'm not going to go into it, but what I suggest you do is you take a look yourself and you try to discover, what are the different businesses that Tesla is operating today, and how do they create economies of scope? How are they decreasing average costs of their activities by doing different things together? Why does that make sense? Okay, so let's move on. Another reason why we'd want to diversify is to stretch our corporate management competencies. This is a potential benefit, right? I do something really well in my company. LVMH is really good at brand and image development. So I've got this dominant logic, these corporate level managerial competencies. And you know what? I can take my knowledge of marketing and brand development that I'm applying maybe with Louis Vuitton and other things, and apply it in different markets with different products. So I can expand and move out of, for example, fashion and leather goods into wines and spirits and perfumes and whatnot. There's a certain know-how that I can apply across these different business sectors. Same thing with 3M. 3M, sure, everybody knows the original activity, but look at all the stuff they're doing. They're making Post-it notes. They're looking at healthcare issues here. They're all over the place. And why? Because there are some strong corporate skills that they've got up here, specifically managing brand equity and managing innovation, that they can apply in a variety of things. So that's the second reason, why do it. Third reason, well, you can have a company like Fosun that has some internal processes that are really, really, really good. And if you're in a developing economy, some of those internal processes and skills that you've built up may be hard to find in the labor market. So it may be better to, basically grow my company and expand into different services and use my existing knowledge that I've got inside Fosun to run and develop new services and products. And number 4, we've got potential benefit of increasing my market power. Sometimes I'm in a company and I've got basically a company and we're selling a certain product in the market, but I've got a competitor that's selling tons of products to my market, and I'm competing with this person, and he has a little bit more room for strategic maneuvering than I've got. A simple product in a simple market, and they're selling tons of products maybe in a market. Well, maybe I want to match them competitively and say, hey, I'm going to match you, and so I'll be able to compete at the same game you're playing. So we're similar. And that may be a reasonable thing to do to respond competitively. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. Because when you have many different products, you can cross-subsidize an activity with another. So very simply, if I've got a product here, let's call it product A, and I've got a product B over here, and let's say, well, I've got a competitor over here with product A prime. They're competing in this market and they're selling something similar here. And this is a totally different market, right? And let's say I've got a lot of dominant power over here in market B. well, you know what I'll do? I'll lower the price here. I may even make a loss. I can compete aggressively against my competitor. Why? Because maybe my profits are real high over here. So I can cross-subsidize my loss with my profits that I'm making over here in B. So I'm cross-subsidizing, and this gives me an incredible advantage over my rivals and also over potential entrants, right? Because entrants are going to say, whoa, if I come in this market, market A, this guy's just going to use market B to cross-subsidize a very aggressive pricing strategy, so I don't enter. And that's how it works. Vertical integration, now, our third subject, is all about a specific type of diversification, and it's all about diversification within the vertical structure of an industry. Well, let's just remind ourselves what we mean by vertical and horizontal. Horizontal integration, to start, is moving across. So imagine you're, Ford Motor Company or Renault automobile manufacturer. You've got your component manufacturers above you, upstream from you. They provide you inputs. You assemble your automobile using their inputs and some products, some components that you manufacture yourself, and you then distribute through concessions. So you're distributing through distribution channels and all automobile concessions, which are often independent organizations that are buying and have a relationship with you and are buying and selling in local markets. Horizontally from you are markets that are, well, they're like you. They could be also other automobile manufacturers, but similar markets horizontally, truck manufacturers, bus manufacturers, and things like that. So Renault could actually say, yeah, you know what, we're going to expand our activities into truck manufacturing, which is what they've done, right? They've gone into truck manufacturing. They've gone into bus manufacturing, right? And in some cases, you can horizontally merge. You can buy another automobile manufacturer that's right next to you. So this is horizontal activity, horizontal integration. I can integrate different activities horizontally. Now, this is good because we share many of the same processes. Sometimes we buy similar components, or we use same distribution channels, and by expanding horizontally, I can take advantage of the fact that I've already got that all in place. Now, vertical integration is a different story. So here we've got my value network, and I'm an automobile manufacturer, and I'm getting my components upstream. I'm assembling my automobile, and then I'm distributing it through my concessions. Well, vertical integration basically is saying, well, maybe I want to play many games. Maybe I want to be many things vertically. The first type of vertical integration is going to be upstream, backwards integration. So I'm currently making cars, but now I want to also manufacture the parts. And this could be good because I can capture the upstream profits. Imagine that you're down here buying components from, Renault or Ford is buying components from people upstream. Well, I'm going to be paying a markup, obviously, on these different components. Well, I can now capture that markup. Now, got to be careful because I can sell this product cheaper to myself. But when I sell it cheaper to myself, I'm losing the potential revenue of selling it to somebody else that's ready to pay more. So there is not as much profit gain or savings of costs as you may think. Yeah, I sell it to myself cheaper, but every time I sell a product to myself at a cheap price, I'm not selling it to somebody else that would pay more. So you got to be pretty careful about this. Good example is Starbucks growing its own beans in their production process. The other type of vertical integration is downstream or forward integration. And probably the best example I can think of would be airlines. Airlines before depended heavily on travel agencies to sell tickets. And now, well, you go directly. You can still go through a digital travel agency and buy it. Sometimes brokers, so they're actually, buying up seats in advance and getting less expensive seats. But airlines go directly to their customers now via their websites. So they're capturing the downstream profits that these travel agencies were adding. So instead of letting the distributor add additional margin and increasing the price, well, they're going to grab that by themselves. It's kind of like, when people who sell their own apartment or sell their own house or sell a car or a used car themselves on an online site. Don't have to go to a real estate agent anymore. And so if I sell my house directly to the customer, I get the benefits and the profit that the real estate agent was getting. So some of the problems we have with integration. Specifically, one of the issues may be that that I'm going to make some investments to maybe integrate downstream or upstream. And these investments are going to be paid by my investors. And in some cases, the profits of the activities upstream or downstream from me may be less than the profits I'm making. And so if I have an investor, right, if I have my company here, right, and I've got my operations, that's a company, and I have a stockholder over here, and we invest in buying something maybe upstream from us. So we invest in an upstream firm, and this is going to require investments, and so maybe I need more stock, and I issue stock shares to do this. I'm going to invest in this company, and this company maybe has low profit. Well, what's going to happen is the stock value of my company, which is now all of this, right? My company now is all of this stuff here. The price of my stock of this will actually potentially decrease. My investors are investing in both of these, and if one of these activities has a low profit, the share price of my company will start to go down. The average return on investment could decrease for my investors. That's not cool. They don't like that. Another problem with integration is integration may require different and distinct resources and capabilities. I may not be able to do very easily what my supplier was doing. They may have their own network, may have their own skills, and sometimes you just can't do it. And, yeah, I'm going to try to sell my own house, but maybe it requires certain skills that real estate agencies only have, and I don't have them. So integration can require distinct resources and capabilities that maybe only these different operators, these pure players, have. And in fact, some organizations and some sectors are now disintegrating. Companies are realizing that they want to focus on their core activity and stop doing certain things, maybe upstream or downstream. Real good example of that you've got right here. Call centers, right? Call centers, perfect example of disintegration because, well, they're saying, well, that's not really our business. So we can pay a call center company to take our phone calls and answer our customer questions, and that's what they're good at. They can do it better than we can. Payroll services, we have companies like ADP. ADP is a international company that manages payroll for corporations. They do it really well. And so big companies are going to subcontract out to, ADP to do their payroll. They do it better. It's a distinct capability that ADP has. So companies are now actually disintegrating and getting rid of operations where they know, hey, somebody else can do it better than us and cheaper than us. Let's get rid of it. But subcontracting also has potential costs and potential dangers. So yeah, I can work with ADP, but will it always work out? First off, there may be few alternatives. So I can subcontract out to somebody to do my payroll, but hey, you know what? Maybe that company is a monopoly, or maybe that company is, they've only got choices of 2 potential payroll managers that I don't want to do payroll anymore. I have low power, and they're going to negotiate a big price for me to do it, and they know they've got power. So that's the first thing. If the product or service is really complex, I'm going to go to a supplier upstream, or look at something to help me with the distributor downstream. If this service is super complex, or if the product is complex, well, I'm going to lack clarity, and they can take advantage again of this. This is a power that potential sellers or buyers have over me. And another thing which is really interesting is the use of specific investments, relation-specific investments. So again, take the example of ADP. Imagine we have our computer system. Okay, we've got a computer system, and my computer system is communicating with, and I'm collecting all my information about, my workers, the hours they work, etc., etc., etc. And over here we've got ADP, and ADP says, hey, we can do your payroll for you, no problem. We'll send your employees their checks at the end of the month, and we'll make sure they get paid. The only thing you got to do, though, is you got to take your IT system, add a little module, okay, that it's not free, right? And it's an investment for you. And once you've added that module, our IT systems can effectively communicate, and we'll be able to do your payroll, and we'll communicate the checks to the bank and make sure your employees are properly paid. So that's our job as a payroll manager. Bank. Well, it's not a bank, but I tried. And this is cool, but this is my company. These are my people, and now suddenly I'm making this major investment so that our systems can talk to each other. Well, ADP knows that I've made this investment. ADP knows that if they start increasing their price, well, I've made this investment, and I can't just unplug this thing right away. I've got to stick with ADP. And so I've made a relation-specific investment to be able to work with my subcontractor, and they can exploit that. It's a switching cost. I can't quickly change to another provider of payroll services. And this is one of the dangers that exists in subcontracting. So, if we measure the pros and cons, should we integrate? Well, if there is a risk, the subcontractor can behave in an opportunistic fashion, well, then maybe just do it and integrate the activity yourself. Should I subcontract? Pardon me. Well, if unique strategic capabilities are required and you don't have them, well, then you need to subcontract. And you need to find those capabilities in a subcontractor. There's a lot of other reasons why you should or shouldn't, but these are some of them to consider. All right, so we finished our first video. If you have any questions, don't forget to send them along, and we'll move into our second video right away.